Hey everyone, it's Nightlight9, and in this video we're going over the new Black Waltz Ruin EX2. It says it requires a power of 210,000. Well, let's get into it. We're using essentially the same team we used to beat Ruin EX1. I've made a couple adjustments, but let's go ahead and get into it. This stage is like two different fights, right? You have the fight in the beginning with all three of them, and then you have a second fight with just the middle one. Talking about the first part with all three of them, this is where Tifa comes into play, and we are using Tiger Fangs to do that magical attack debuff. Other than that, we just need to do as much damage as possible, preferably physical attack, because the middle boss will do the magic attack down buff, so magic attack users are going to be hindered by that, and non-elemental damage because he resists every type of elemental attack you might do. So all of these items are focused on a few things. Trying to get magic defense up a little bit so that HP can be just a little bit lower, and also trying to get physical attack as high as it can be. Coming over to Cloud, same thing. He's set up to do just as much physical DPS as possible. And you'll note that, I could put Murasame in the main hand and get quite a good, almost 400 buff to physical attack, or about 350, but he actually does more damage having the R ability for physical damage potency, because if I put that in the second slot, it's going to take 15% physical ability damage away, and ultimately that just doesn't come out to do as much damage. As far as that goes, you're gonna need some sort of magical damage to get him down from sword, just like the first fight, and you will need triangle sigil break. Other than that, sub-equipment on Cloud, just trying to get him the most amount of damage, except for I put these two weapons on him to give him more magical defense, because one game that you do kind of need to play is the HP game. And if you'll notice, Cloud has 7876, Tifa has 7793, but Aerith has 8000. And I specifically tried to manipulate Aerith's HP to have the most, so that she would be the most likely target for his strike move in the second part of the fight. Other than that, I focused almost completely on trying to get heal stat for her, and that's just because we want to be as efficient as possible. I'm also bringing D-Faith on her again, because that first initial double triple cast. Okay, yeah, well, all three of them do the triple cast, but they do it back to back, and it's going to be very hard to survive if you can't get your units healed up enough and them debuffed enough simultaneously, because we are not using Sephiroth. We did not pull for his sword, so if you don't have that, surviving that beginning part is going to be a pain. But that is the setup, and wait till you see the fight. Now, just like in the first fight, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get on Tifa, and you're going to get ready to upper shot. As soon as you see Faith cast by the guy on the right, cast your upper shot, switch over to Aerith and do 1 D-Faith. Obviously, 2 D-Faith would completely take down that buff, but it will leave you with not quite enough ATB to get off 2 heals in the meantime, and that is going to be important if your team stats look similar to mine. So, immediately get off your Kiraga, go back to Tifa. You're going to want to upper shot one more time, and then switch. You're going to want to upper shot this guy as well. Immediately after you get this upper shot, go over to Aerith, get ready, switch your stances, cast your Kiraga, and you should survive the second triple waltz cast. Very important that you, like I said, it's a balancing act between magical defense and HP, and this is exactly, if you notice, Tifa had 443 HP left, so without getting just the right amount of debuffs there, and without getting, the Kiraga off twice, she absolutely would have died. From here, it's more of a balancing act. So we still want to kill the one on the left first, but we also want to try to keep the middle one and the right one magically debuffed as much as possible. And every time I see, one of those debuffs going away, if I notice it, I'm trying to get on Tifa and make sure that I'm keeping them debuffed. Now here, if they do the magic defense debuff to either anybody who's not Aerith, I would immediately solid Mana Ward to clear that off. However, because my Aerith has considerably more magical defense, she's sitting at like 160 something as opposed to 130-ish or whatever, she can deal with that. And ultimately, I think it's a more efficient use of ATB to just keep using Curaga to get the... You ideally want your entire team to get as topped off as much as possible. Here I see that they've doubled the debuff, so I go ahead and use Solid Mana Ward to make her not, completely vulnerable to magical attacks. Other than that, keep spamming Somersault. It is the easiest way to push through as much damage as you possibly can. And you're essentially, in this first part, it's just like, once you get the first one down, it becomes just a little bit easier. And then once you get the second one down, it becomes a little bit easier. And then once you get him down from his flying buff, then you kind of enter into phase 2 of this fight. So here, just kind of, if I have any extra ATB, I see that everybody's, pretty healed up, I'm going to just throw some D-Faiths, anything to just kind of lower that magic attack as much as possible. And then once I have it, sufficiently lowered, then I will, let my AI try to do as much damage as they possibly can. Another thing to be aware of is I like to switch stances every time I see Thundaga. That is definitely the move that does the most amount of damage. So, it's okay to an extent to take the Faragas from Black Waltz 2. That's just fine. But when Black Waltz 3 does Thundaga, you really want to try to switch your stances and, if possible, kind of almost have your Curaga ready to go. If you cast it right at about the same time because of her delay, she will just kind of heal up everything that he's just taken you down with. Here, D-Faith also works as a magical, damage, so it's kind of 2 for 1 there. It doesn't do, I think, maybe a little bit less damage than Ruinra does, but it's, providing multi-purpose, so I definitely like to use D-Faith here on Aerith while we're in this situation, because what we're wanting is we want to go into phase 2 with everybody being at full HP, and specifically we want Aerith to be at full HP. And the reason is because she has the most HP, if she's full, that gives her the most likely chance of being targeted by Strike. And the reason that we want her to be targeted by the Strike is because if anybody has to die at the end of the day, we need it to be her. And the reason for that is because it becomes a DPS race. Starting now, we are on the clock. Because eventually, just like in the first fight, those strikes are going to start doing more and more and more damage. And from my experience running this, I want to say this was like my maybe 6th attempt, maybe 7th or 8th even, I don't know. It took me a while to figure out exactly how much debuffing I needed to do and how many Curagas I needed to do in the beginning of the fight. But, so that was a few runs, and then it took a few runs to get the RNG right on this guy, because he will randomly target other people with Strike, and I couldn't figure out a way to 100% manipulate that. But I do know that a lot of times in the beginning, he does not target Aerith. I'm guessing here it's because I wasn't able to get everybody quite to full. So Cloud, at this point, still had more HP than Aerith did. But he survives, and I'm ready to do a heal. So we get that off. Now, after the strike is when he's going to start his basically combo of every single magic attack that he does. What I would advise here is, this is why I've been holding Healing Wind, because I'm going to do two things with this. One, using the Healing Wind to get HP back so that I don't have to worry about anybody dying. But if you notice, I'm also sitting on a full ATB bar here. And you would think, you know, Curaga, right? Why not? Cloud's down, he's kind of low. But a lot of times, I've noticed that this freeze lock, like I said, for some reason, it often does not target Aerith. So, what I wanted to have was a full ATB bar so that I could cast as many Ruin Res as humanly possible. And if you notice, I was so ahead of the game that I actually was able to get another free energy strike off with Cloud, which is a big deal. So now I'm going to go ahead and heal everybody up. And what I'm constantly kind of trying to keep track of as far as HP is, if I switch stance, could they survive the normal strike attack? And I believe that the amount of damage that that strike does to somebody like Cloud is somewhere in the neighborhood of 63 to 6,600. And so I would like his HP, if possible, to be above 6,600. Here, I did not use a combo with those limits. Instead, I staggered them in order to delay that Thundaga as much as I possibly could. It just gives you that much more time to build ATB. Cloud is the only one that I'm really worried about with health, so I went ahead and buffed his magic defense. Not sure it was 100% necessary here. And here you go. Again, Cloud is the one who gets targeted, so I really wanted to make sure that he had as much HP as possible, and we'll get to see exactly how much damage it did to him in about 2 seconds. 63, 64. So when I said between 63 and 66, it was almost 64, almost right in the middle of those two, and he almost died. He had less than 100 HP left. So that was what I was mostly trying to do. Now from here on out, I believe all the strikes are going to be lethal no matter what you do. So this is why I'm casting Ruin Res with Aerith instead of trying to heal, because I know I need to squeeze out as much damage as humanly possible. I've gotten him down to under 10%, even under 5% on several runs, and you know, once you run out of people, it's just over. What happens here a lot to me is he ends up targeting Cloud next, and Tifa just can't finish him off. So I'm really trying to get as much damage in as I possibly can. And you'll notice after I get this next free energy off, I am just jamming. I know his limit break's coming up, and I start just spam clicking where it's going to be, because I want to get this off in case Cloud gets targeted next. Luckily, it was enough. We put him away, and that is the fight. So just remember, 2 phases to this fight. The first stage is all about survival. The second stage is a little bit of survival, but it's a lot about just doing enough DPS to beat him before he KOs all 3 of your party members. Hopefully this video helped you beat it. If it did, subscribe for future content. As always, thanks for watching.